We're back at the Cooler Master booth looking at cooling. Probably no surprise that Cooler Master would have such a product. But we saw the cases already. You can check that out if you want to see the H100 Mini ITX case. Should be on the channel around now. What we have next is a whole wall front to back of cooling products, mostly liquid with some air mixed in. And then also there's going to be a Novak cooling solution that should go to market, which is unlike most of the other Novak solutions we've seen in the past. Still waiting for Der Bauer to actually make his. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Gigabyte Z390 AORS Master Motherboard, which comes equipped with one of the more powerful Z390 VRMs for heavier overclocks on the new 9th gen Intel CPUs. The AORS Master is also one of the few motherboards with a real heatsink this generation, featuring a mix of high surface area fins and looks-oriented cover blocks. Oh, and it's also got updated RGB illumination. Learn more at the link below. Let's talk about the Master Liquid ML240M Mirage DIY. This is the one that's got the vortex in it, so that's not just like a for show thing. It should actually do that in reality, and the way it does the vortex or the cyclone in the center is by switching the impeller. So from what I understand, it goes to a 3-phase water pump, and the impeller, and there's some on the wall over here we might be able to film, the impeller has a shallower angle between the impeller blades, so the blades end up a little closer together, and that creates the vortex spin that you see in the pump and res combo. So kind of cool. The PWM cycle of the motherboard will impact the cyclone a bit. So depending on the motherboard and the PWM cycle, each one's gonna be a little bit different. The vortex may be more or less exaggerated depending, but that's part of an open loop kit, which seems to be getting popular this show. Corsair, of course, launched theirs. Cooler Master's been doing it for a little while, but this is updated. Some of the cool things to point out, other than the obvious points of a kit being that it includes everything, is there's a sort of cloudy or foggy hard tubing. So that's kind of nice. Gotten rid of the soft tubing, and it gives you a unique look considering people are kind of moving away from the colorful coolant that just gunks everything up. It still lets you get some interesting looks in it. But pricing, $250 to $300 probably. Not final yet. TBD on that. Likely a CES launch, so that'd be next year, first quarter. And then the kit is a block, a reservoir, a pump, and a radiator with 2 fans. It'll come with the fittings and hard tubing. The amount of hard tubing and the count of fittings that will come with it will depend entirely on what Cooler Master decides it thinks makes sense for the kit. Probably multiple SKUs for different CPU blocks, so if you want like maybe a TR or maybe an HETT Intel, might have a separate SKU for that. And the dimensions of the impeller I'll mention as well in the open loop are a bit larger than the ones in the closed loop, so impeller size does change based on the loop, and that's where, I mean, you've got more space in the open loop to do a bigger impeller and get the cyclone desired. I think that covers that one for the open loop kit. The next one, let's talk about the weird one on the wall, the Master Liquid Dual Mirage. So this one is largely a looks thing, but it is unique, so we'll give it that. It's got 2 pumps in it. The design is similar to the single pump Mirage, so the pumps aren't that different, but it's just 2 of them. And this is, I'll note, a prototype right now, so not final. You can see like the PCB hanging out and soft tubing and piano wire, so it's a prototype. It's held together for the show, and it'll be cleaned up a bit before launch. They're looking at a CES 2020 launch for that one, likely a $200 price point. And then the cold plate might have an option that's a TR4 size as well. If you wanted it, that'd be a separate SKU though. It'll depend on how popular the next TR4 is, and there is going to be one. Aluminum housing, ARGB lights, and it's looks focused. I mean, like, you could make the argument that 2 pumps will give you a redundancy in the event of a failure, but realistically it is just because it looks kind of different and neat. After that one, we can talk about maybe the Master Liquid Vivid. That's the one right next to me here. Not much to say. So it's got an LCD in it. We've seen these before. They're never really particularly impressive, but this one does have probably a thermocouple in it. Might be a thermistor, but it's got a thermal sensor in it that's fed into the cold plate, which allows you to get a more a top level IHS reading of the CPU temperature. So that's kind of neat. It'll read that out on top of the device. It can read PWM just from the TAC. And that one, see, Master Liquid Vivid, I don't have a price on that one. Next one, so I'll mention this quickly on air cooling. There's a 212X SE. It's a nickel plated one. It's the same fin pitch, it's the same fin density, it's the same heat pipe count, it's the same heat pipe type, it's probably centered, and a little higher RPM, or a little higher for RAM clearance, but otherwise it's a 212. It just looks different. It's got nickel plating, so that might interest 212 fans. The 3D VVC next to it is much more interesting though. That one is a vapor chamber design, but it's a massive vapor chamber. So vapor chamber goes down all the way to the CPU and cuts across, comes back up. It's where the heat pipes would typically be, except it's a vapor chamber instead. And in theory, this should perform a bit better if you had a like-for-like comparison. That's kind of hard to really test, but there's a few reasons. One, vapor chamber, and then two, it would, in theory, funnel the flow more centrally, maybe retain pressure a bit better from the fans, but how that matters, we'd have to see in testing. It is an interesting design, definitely. 140 millimeter fan on that ARGB. It can have, it's got 2 fans actually, and 165 millimeters for the height based on a rough show floor measurement. $130 target. CES is a likely launch date for that. There's also a G200P, G400P. These are really low profile coolers. One has lighting, one without. They'll both be $40. And the smaller one's still $40 because it's got better materials for 4 heat pipes versus 2 heat pipe design. Likely October for that. And then there's a Wraith Ripper follow-up that will be compatible with all the sockets. That's the MA620M, probably $100, August or September for that launch. Similar to Wraith Ripper, just fits everything. Finally, the Novak cooling. So I'm not going to say too much about this because it's not final yet, but Novak cooling we showed with their Bauer solution last year, the phase change loop. We've showed it in the past with system builds. It's an interesting thing to do, but very difficult to do at a retail scale, and Cooler Master is going to be trying to do that. So Novak is a 3M solution. There are different boiling points for Novak, and the way it works is you have a condenser on top, typically of the case, and then you have the liquid inside. You submerge the components in the liquid. This is not new information, but and it'll boil off as it heats. The Novak fluid has a low boiling point. The one that Cooler Master is presently using is a 40 degrees Celsius boiling point, I'm told. Sometimes we've seen like 60, and it boils. It will go up, evaporate, go up to the top of the case, hit a condenser, condense back into liquid, and drip back down into the chassis. That's how it works. It's not a novel idea, but it would be the first time we've seen it in a retail product successfully if Cooler Master can pull it off, because a few people have tried, but it's never quite done more than a show floor presence. So they're trying to do that. But that's it for Cooler Master's cooling products and cases. Check the separate video for that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.